With a couple Final Four players returning to NC State basketball, it's important to know one thing heading into next season. You got to up the Benergy.
You are Locked On Wolfpack, your daily podcast on the NC State Wolfpack, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Wolfpack Nation? It's time to get locked in with Locked On. Thanks for making Locked On Wolfpack your first listen each and every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers can get $150 back in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's right, $150 with any winning $5 bet. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Happy Tuesday to all. As always, I'm Grayson Boone, joined by former Wolfpack defensive tackle Kenton Gibbs. Kenton, we've seen a couple of these announcements come back from some members of our Final Four squad. Michael O'Connell announced that he's returning. Jaden Taylor announced that he's returning. And even though the deadline had passed for potential transfer portal entries, Ben Middlebrooks has also now said that he will be returning. How significant is it to return Ben Middlebrooks to this lineup next year?
You and I both talked about how the energy that he provides and the effort, the hustle, the tenacity that he gives is a really, really big thing that you need for this team, because it sets a temperament, it sets a tempo that, you know, there's a phrase in football, and I believe it applies to basketball somewhat as well, in terms of big men lead, right? And so for us defensive linemen, what Coach Nelson would always say is, if they're looking at, you're the heaviest guys on the field, right, on the defensive side of the ball, because obviously I was defensive tackle, boom. If you're running to the ball with all-out effort, what then happens for the 240-pound guy, for the 200-pound guy? They now have to pick it. It's the same thing with Ben Middlebrooks. If you see the 6'10 guy diving on the floor for loose balls, if you see him flying into the stands to save a rebound, what makes you think, hey, this is not the tone and tempo of this team, and this is, I can get away with watching a ball go out of bounds off me, just like, oh, sorry, coach, it happens sometimes. So having Ben Middlebrooks back from that standpoint is good. And, of course, there are some things that you want to see him take a next step with, but getting him back, big deal.
They say two of the things that you can't coach are attitude and hustle, and Ben Middlebrooks scores very highly in both of those percentiles. And you talk a lot about the Benergy that really got going in the postseason. I mean, throughout the course of the entire season, I think Middlebrooks really flew under the radar in terms of how he could impact a basketball game. And sure, his numbers are not going to jump off the page at you. He only averaged 5.7 points a game, 4.4 rebounds a game. We're going to need to see upticks in both of those categories big time coming up next year. And we've been talking a lot about this roster construction that's still currently going on to finalize that last spot for Kevin Keatts going into next season. And you might notice that Ben Middlebrooks will be only one of two players that is 6'10 or taller. And Middlebrooks will be effectively the backup center. So you're going to see a bump in minutes for Middlebrooks coming up. And what does that mean? He needs to be a lot more effective on the glass. He needs to be a lot more efficient in scoring the basketball. And we need to continue seeing that Benergy, that relentless energy that he has bottled up. Sometimes it can be a little bit too much. I think at times he looks like a bull in a china shop, which is entertaining to say the least. But that type of play style, it works. I immediately go back to the way he played against Filipowski in the Elite Eight. He knocked Filipowski off of his game, frustrated him so badly that Filipowski played horribly and ended up fouling out of that game. And that was a really big deal. You look at Middlebrooks in the first round game of the NCAA tournament, put up his career high against Texas Tech. Somebody you would have never expected to step up at that point in time. It's that type of effort that you really value in a guy like Middlebrooks. And you certainly have to get a lot more of it when you're looking at next season.
And you talk about the idea of he is a guy that sometimes you have to rein him in a little bit. Well, my coach has always told me I'd rather have a player I have to rein in than a player I have to ramp up. A player that I have to say, hey, dial it back a little bit is much better than the player that you're like, can you get it going today, man? Can you please just make it happen? And beyond that, you talk about the size and him being a backup. There's two pivotal things I want everybody to remember here. MOC started the year off as a backup, and yet through very clear statistical analysis and through the old eyeball test, right? That gets hashtag get those nerds out of my sports. Even through the he got that dog in him test, you eventually saw, wait a minute, this team functions a lot better with him on the court. And so things had to shift around. And so the same thing could be possible for Ben Middlebrooks here in terms of maybe he starts off at the season as a backup center. Maybe he moves in that starter role. Maybe he just gives quality minutes off the bench all year. But in the words of Robert and I, be relevant when your number is called. That is what I want for Ben Middlebrooks more than anything else. Be relevant when your number is called. Commit one or two post moves to memory that you can go to in a crunch that you know this is my spot, this is my move, this is what I do. Because for all of the different things that we think about in terms of what DJ Burns did well, that post spin, it was the blender, baby. It was you. When you were in there, you knew what was happening. It was all over but the shouting. So, that and his drop step to counter off that. And so, there's a very real situation where I don't want him to develop a post bag as deep as DJ Burns. I just want you one or two moves that are your go-to, and everything else, all of the, hey, calm down, Coach Keese can do that. All of the, hey, may not have been the most well thought out shot. We can reel that in, or like you said, that bullet China shot thing, you can reel that in. But just to me, keep the energy, keep attacking the glass, and again, protect the paint smartly. So I guess I would add that in as well. A little bit more rim protection and some moves that you commit. One or two moves, really. If you got to stick to one, that's fine with me. Some you commit to memory, protect the rim.
Yeah, that's a perfect segue to my last couple comments here. Our roster does not include DJ Burns next year. He's aged out. We got to find a way to replace that type of interior production. And Middlebrooks and Brandon Huntley-Hatfield are really going to have to carry the water when you're looking at that category specifically. So for Middlebrooks, I mentioned he kind of plays like a bull in a china shop. Just need to refine that just a hair. I need that type of physicality, but a little bit more under control in the paint. And this is coming from a 5'11" white kid. You know what I was doing when I was playing basketball. I was jacking up threes. So I'm not one to speak on an interior post presence here, but I would like to see Middlebrooks just go up with authority. None of this soft stuff, laying it up, flailing out of bounds. I need you to go up and put it on somebody's head. He has that capability because he's the Energizer Bunny on this basketball team. So I think with just a little bit more refining and honing in that energy in an effective way, he could be a dynamite force there in the paint, along with Huntley-Hatfield in the front court. But nonetheless, another big-time player to return to this lineup. And you talk about culture and returning players and familiarity. This is another really big deal. And Middlebrooks, again, he's going to have to play a pivotal role in this front court coming up next season. So it's very nice to have him returning and being excited to do so. Coming up next, we're getting into a whole lot of nothing or a whole lot of something after a quick word from our sponsors. Our first sponsor of the day is FanDuel. It's winner take all time in the NBA and NHL, and FanDuel is here giving you a shot to bring home the big win of your own. Right now, new customers can get $150 back in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's right, $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. If you're a Hurricanes fan that's looking to will this team into the Eastern Conference Finals, maybe you put a little something extra on it on FanDuel. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Middle portion of our Tuesday show. Now time for a whole lot of nothing or a whole lot of something. 3 topics, and we'll tell you exactly where we stand on them. First one here. Still no word from potential ECU transfer Ezra Asor to fill out this last roster spot in the men's basketball team. Whole lot of nothing, whole lot of something.
Whole lot of something. My brother in Christ signed on the dotted line. What's going on here? That's concerning for me because I'm going to tell you something. I've learned a thing or two in my short time on this earth so far. And one of those things is a bird in the hand is better than 2 in the bush, okay? And as much as you would like to nail a high quality player like him, I'd rather stick with a player that I believe is of not quite that same level, but that is still good, as opposed to waiting around for the landing a big fish, and then you end up with, you just have to get whatever you can in terms of, oh no, we had a decommitment last minute, so we just got to give anybody a scholarship. Because I'm not going to say any names, but we have seen that before with big men here, where a scholarship was available and somebody decommitted last minute, and it was like, well, damn, now we're scrambling. Somebody has to get the scholarship. And, things worked out on the injury front to where that young man ended up playing significant minutes. And it was very clear right away, oh, that's why he was like a last minute kind of like, oh, we have an extra scholarship, we got to give it away type of guy, because he was not a Power 5 front court player. And so, you don't want to end up in that situation again, because that happened already once under Keats' tenure. And I think I still got PTSD from it. So I hope he does.
Unfortunately, I know exactly who you're talking about. But yeah, if I'm Kevin Keats and I'm NC State, I don't want this to be a long, drawn-out process to try and land a sore here, because the longer you wait, and then potentially you wait that long and then miss on him, that situation, exactly like Kenton just outlined, you end up having to just take someone to fill the spot instead of getting who you want to fill that spot. And that's not a situation that NC State needs to find themselves in, especially not coming off of a Final Four run. But it is very much a two-way street, and Kevin Keats can only do whatever Kevin Keats can do to try and get him to commit here, and the rest is on a soar. And you certainly want him to weigh his options as credibly as he can. And I would imagine that this process being a little bit drawn out means that he's getting maybe even more interest than he had anticipated he might get once entering the portal. But it's definitely a whole lot of something, because NC State, you can't afford to wait around forever, because in the event that you do miss on this guy, you find yourself in a tough spot. So it's certainly a fine balance to try and find here. I don't know, maybe if they have a certain deadline in mind that if you can't get him to commit by then, you start to move on. But, I mean, you don't want this to wage out through the rest of the summer here. You want to bring him in, lock down that roster, and then start building momentum already into next season. So it's a whole lot of something. We need to hear something sooner or later. Second one here, NC State baseball welcomes Norfolk State to the Doak on Tuesday, and the Pac-9 have not won a midweek game since March the 19th. Whole lot of nothing, whole lot of something.
Whole lot of something, because I'm a big believer, and I'm not a very superstitious guy, but I'm a little stitious. And we need to find a way to at least be formidable, at least be effective enough to where we are not like whatever we trot out in the middle of the week, we know it's going to be a wash every midweek. We know we're going to get cooked. And with all due respect to Norfolk State, this is a game that you need to win. You need to have your get right moment, because the reality is, I know that postseason has a different vibe and feel and all that than a regular midweek game. Your lineups are different. You do things differently with your pitching staff and your bullpen and all that. You still need to get right. You still need to get some good juju going in the middle of the week, because you don't want to be going into a tournament where it's like, oh yeah, we haven't won on Thursday in about what, a month and a half now? We'll figure it out. That's a little problematic.
Like we spoke about on Monday, it's definitely a whole lot of something on the front that your RPI will go down whether you win or lose because of how bad Norfolk State is. But in terms of what will happen between the foul poles, it's a whole lot of nothing, because quite honestly, we should smoke Norfolk State. It should be no question from the jump. I would probably expect NC State to score in the first inning, and you know exactly what type of time they're on from there on out. This should be not close. It should be over very quickly, and it's about time that they handle some business on a Tuesday. So for me, right now, it's a whole lot of nothing. Last one here. The NIL market for linemen in the transfer portal is treacherous waters. A little bit of a hassle for NC State to locate quality depth. Whole lot of nothing, whole lot of something.
I want to say a whole lot of nothing, because we have enough young guys on the roster who are coming along that I'm not super upset about this. And I feel like with the way that we've addressed our needs in the portal, like immediate needs, you and I both talked about the fact that even if we bought back Battle and White, you still want another corner or two. We went out and got more corners. You and I both lamented how, and again, this is not meaning to be disrespectful to the receivers of last year, how flatly unproductive everybody in the receiver room not named Kevin Concepcion was last year. You and I both talked about that at length. And look what happened in the portal. When you say attack, when you say they went to work, I mean, turn on the cool Mo D, because I go to work must have been what Joker Phillips and Dave Dorn were hearing, because you go and get a Noah Rogers, you go and get a Jonathan Taylor, you go and get a Jackson, all of these phenomenal guys out of either the portal or out of high school recruiting. You see a concerted effort to go get it. If there was no concerted effort or push for offensive linemen, I feel like there was a reason behind that, so I'll say a whole lot of nothing.
For me, I'm going a whole lot of something, and it kind of feels similar to the situation for basketball right now, in that you don't really want to wait forever, because then you just end up taking whatever you can get. And if it comes down to it in the middle of the season and your depth is not, I guess, up to par, you could say, you could see a glaring hole in potentially your defensive line at a time of need. So
yeah,
I don't think it's any reason to panic, because this is not just an NC State thing. It's countrywide. The premium on linemen is skyrocketed because suddenly everyone needs quality depth. So NC State is kind of in the same boat as a lot of schools. However, there's still plenty of good, solid players out there in the portal. So the fact that this is also taking a little bit longer for NC State football to find their guys, it's not exactly reason for panic, but they too cannot wait forever. But coming up next, we're going to be talking about some transfer portal visitors to NC State here this week after a quick word from our sponsors. All right, timeout. We got to talk more about Monopoly Go. It's that time of the week. It's more about Monopoly Go. There's so much good stuff to experience in this game. In Monopoly Go, you can team up with your friends for timed tournaments where you work together to build up each other's boards. And the more you win together, the more awesome prizes you can unlock. These prizes include unique stickers that you can trade with friends to complete albums for big prizes, cool new playing pieces that you can travel around hundreds of boards with, and hilarious emojis for taunting friends when you smash their buildings or heist their vaults. Plus, in Monopoly Go, it feels new and exciting each and every day. They have constantly changing tournaments and challenges, including unique mini-games such as digging for treasure or a robot pachinko machine. There's always new timed events that help you win big, like massive multipliers for everything you win or rent. There's always something fun to discover in Monopoly Go. So get off the bench and download it now for free on Google Play or the App Store. Game on. Last couple minutes here on Tuesday. Now time to talk a little bit about some potential transfer portal visitors coming to town this week. There's 3 names to know, and we're going to have to keep an eye on and see if NC State can reel any of them in. The first one is Akron safety Kerry Martin, who also played